started dumping trillions of dollars out of helicopters. We haven't seen the economic surprise index this high since 2017. Is that going to turn around now? Is this the moment?
I think we may be seeing the moment, especially in the labor market. I think there are a lot of questions about how the data are reported, like in terms of seasonality and everything. So one thing we haven't talked about is seasonality of payrolls. We have seen significant support from seasonal factors in the first half of the year. But by definition, if seasonality pushes it up, it should push it down in the second half of the year. And I think we saw a turn in today's data as the seasonal factors are starting to subtract a little bit more. I think we will see more of that in July and in September, and I think we did see a turn in the labor market.
All right, so let's move forward to next week and the CPI report. Steve, how important, I know, I feel like every Fed, Steve has their favorite inflation indicator. CPI isn't necessarily it, but it's still an important one, right?
CPI is very important. It's not the official target for the Fed, but it comes before the PCE index, and it's super, super important. And what's going to be interesting next week is the headline number is going to come down to maybe, if you look at it, the Bloomberg consensus, 3.1%. It could be, some have it as low as 3%. These are the lowest numbers in more than 2 years. The Fed's going to be focused on core inflation, excluding food and energy, and that has been sticky. The Fed has been very worried because core inflation has been very slow to come down in the first half of the year. So this is going to be key in terms of, are they going to finally see some progress on core inflation? But for most Americans, the overall inflation is what matters. And if you get a number that's around 3%, that's getting really close to normal for most people. And it's like wage gains have been in the area of 6% if you look at the Atlanta Fed's wage tracker. So people are starting to, with gas prices coming down, people are starting to get real wage gains. So it's like that should have some kind of impact on how people feel about, confidence has been really bad of late.
And confidence is key, right? I mean, Yelena, how important is the consumer inflation expectation to what the Fed wants to do?
Well, it's crucial.
Yeah.
So, and if the Fed sees inflation expectations being contained, that will just help.
They were down when the U of M number came out, right?
Absolutely.
Out a year, 3%.
Yes, and gasoline prices could help if they go down a little bit from here. I think what we really, the crucial point here is the labor market. It's, a little bit about inflation, a little bit about this and that, but what happens in the labor market is crucial. You have to keep those, dollars coming in.
You have a job.
If you don't have a job, that's it. You're not going to continue spending, and things we will see they will cut.
Well, they can't get much better, right? So they can only get worse, but they have to get much worse to really make a difference. 3.6% unemployment.
I'm just going to say Barbie would already have it at 2% inflation.
Yeah, you think?
No.
I don't know the Barbie story, but
Steve Matthews, thank you. Have a great weekend. Yelena Shalaitiva, so great to have you in studio again. This is Bloomberg Radio.
In case you missed it, our latest Business Week podcast features Rory Riggs, the CEO of Cbus, on the evolution gene-edited crops. Download it now at Bloomberg.com or wherever you get your podcast.
All right, coming up, everybody, we're going to stay on the U.S. labor picture. We're going to get into what's going on when it comes to temporary staffing, a great indicator of what's going on in the U.S. workforce. So we're coming up with the CEO of American Staffing right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Partly sunny skies right through this afternoon with a chance of a shower with thundershower popping up 85 to 90. Tonight, any showers then followed by breaking clouds and low 70s overnight. Tomorrow could be an afternoon shower, thundershower again, clouds and sun 85 to 90. A better chance of showers and thunderstorms though coming up on Sunday. Temperatures a bit cooler then, just a bit over 80. This is Gary Best with your 3-day weather forecast here on Bloomberg 1130.
The the Bloomberg Talks podcast. Today's top interviews from around Bloomberg News.
Joining us now, Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi.
We're joined by the JP Morgan Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon.
Wide-ranging conversations with Fortune 500 CEOs, big-name investors, and business leaders around the world. A special interview with Elon Musk,
The Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo.
Bloomberg Talks. Subscribe today on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.
The New Deal created American infrastructure that unleashed new opportunity. Today, we're doing it again with massive investment in modernizing our infrastructure to build for tomorrow. At Build America Mutual, we protect your municipal bond investments that help make it happen, building a vibrant future for our communities and your portfolio. Invest in the future of America with BAM Insured Bonds.
Deliveries at the door. Can someone please unlock?
It's been an eventful afternoon with a spike in bookings at Claudia's event space.
We'd love to host Mermaid Fest.
She was already planning on having more event banners on hand.
500? That's a lot of sales.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Our hiring platform instantly connects you with quality candidates, and you can schedule and conduct virtual interviews right from the Indeed dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 for your first monthly job. Terms and conditions apply.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh, tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
But do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut,
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something either way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
Stay connected with Bloomberg wherever you are with Bloomberg Podcast. On Zero, the Chinese activists who map the country's pollution problems. On Oddlock, what it really takes to convert an office building into apartments. And on Stephanomics, why some of the most renowned cities around the world are in trouble after undergoing profound shifts in population and wealth. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcast today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. It's 3:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We have got stocks well off session highs. The Dow is lower. Both the S&P, NASDAQ, they are pushing higher. NASDAQ 100 index up as well, but perhaps the standout is the Russell 2000, up now by 1.7%, while the Dow is down 47, a drop there of just about 0.2%. S&P 500 index holding on to a 9-point gain right now, up by about 0.2%. The NASDAQ Composite Index up 60 points right now. That is a gain of just about 0.4%. Bottom line here, stocks are trimming gains in thin trading. Treasuries fluctuating, the dollar slumping after soft hiring data ease concerns that the Federal Reserve will have to ratchet up its fight against inflation. 10-year yield 4.05%, with the 2-year 4.93%. Reaction to the jobs report this morning from Lindsay Piegza, chief economist at Stifel.
Well, I do think it fell well short of expectations, but that being said, it's still a solid headline number. And for the Fed, the focus is not that top-line non-farm payroll report. They're looking at the details. They're looking at the inflationary component.
And you can hear more of that conversation on the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. Right now, gold up $14 the ounce to $19.25, a gain of 0.7%. Bitcoin now down 0.2% to 30,206, while West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 2.8%, 73.78 a barrel. Sweet Green shares, they are up again yesterday. They jumped after jumping 15% yesterday, the largest one-day gain in more than a year after Bank of America upgraded the stock to buy from neutral and raised its price target to $17 from $9. Today, we are seeing Sweet Green shares already at $15.47, up by 2.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. All right, Carol Nassau with Matt Miller. We are live in Openbrook Interactive Broker Studio.
We're just loving this gorgeous summer day, aren't we?
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful outside.
I wonder what it feels like.
I thought it was going to be overcast. Oh, you haven't gone out yet?
I haven't been out since this morning.
I went out afternoon to take some pictures of the car.
Oh, deep tease. We're going to have fun with that. Right now, though, we want to stay with the U.S. labor picture because the temporary health service payroll.
Well, yes. Should I just round up what we saw in terms of the numbers today? Because I think it was still a pretty amazing number. We had a change in non-farm payrolls. It was a gain of 209,000, which normally, that's a big gain. We were looking for 230. That was the survey. And remember that we've beaten in the last 14 months. The number beat the survey. So obviously people continue to up their numbers for the survey. And now we finally missed.
And the temporary health service payroll, though, declined again. It is considered as a leading indicator for the unemployment rate. So let's get some thoughts on that, because back with us, is Richard Walquist. He's president and CEO of American Staffing Association, a trade association representing the American staffing industry, and he does this on Zoom from Alexandria, Virginia. Richard, good to have you here with Matt and myself. So, remind us of your members and then what you guys are seeing when it comes to the U.S. labor market.
Sure. Hello, Carol. Hello, Matt. So our members are sourcing talent into every industry in the United States, including NGOs, and a big piece of the business, the industry, is in the government sector. The industry literally sources talent into every occupation in the United States, and you're exactly right, Carol. People take a look at our industry because we are a leading employment indicator, which is to say that traditionally, and of course every economic cycle is a little bit different, this one's been very much different, but traditionally temporary health is a leading indicator when the economy is beginning to heat back up again and employer confidence is picking back up again. We're a leading indicator as we see economic uncertainty. And so what we've been seeing for the past several months, very typical of this kind of a segment in the economic cycle, is employers have been dialing back on their use of flexible talent as a first-tier strategy. They're kind of taking a good hard look at what might be ahead. At the same time, we continue to hear reports that they are adding to their talent vectors. And that reflects, I think, confidence in what's ahead, whether we've got a bit of a soft landing, a short and shallow recession. They're confident. They want to hang on to the talent that they've got.
Wait, so they're pulling back? I'm a little confused. They're holding on or they're pulling back?
They're pulling back so they're dialing back on that flexible outer ring of talent. So these are temporary and contract workers, and so they're dialing back on that. At the same time, we're talking to CEOs that say they still continue to get orders for full-time talent. I think that the job numbers reflect the fact that we've got job openings in America. The JOLTS numbers indicate we've got 1.6 job openings for every unemployed job seeker. But here's the other thing, Matt and Carol. Not everyone who's seeking a job has got the skills that employers currently need. So I'm hearing from our members that talent is still a scarce commodity in terms of certain skill sets in certain industries.
Are you hearing that people are coming back in the labor force who have been sitting it out during the pandemic? Yelena Shirley was just with us for BNP Paribas, and she was saying, women especially are starting to come back into the labor force now.
Women have actually been the winners, Matt, over the last couple of the BLS reports. We're seeing uptick in terms of number of women that are part of the labor force. Labor force participation rates are stagnant. I mean, they haven't really moved much in the last several months, and they continue to be well below the levels that we saw pre-pandemic, roughly running in the levels we saw in the 1970s. Fact of the matter is, a lot of people have left the labor force. If we were running the same labor force participation rate as we were pre-pandemic, we have another 2 million workers in the labor force or actively seeking work. So yes, women have been a winner here. Employment amongst the minorities, especially Black Americans, has ticked down a little bit.
Well, yeah, actually, we had some stories that Black workers accounting for 90% of the recent U.S. unemployment jump. So, once again, we're seeing as things maybe change a little bit, or we start to maybe potentially be at a transitional point, potentially maybe in the labor force, that once again, some of the minority groups being hit the hardest. So Richard, the reason we like talking with folks like you is you have these industry members, and so you get a good cross-sampling of what's going on. So do your members talk a lot about recession? Just trying to figure out kind of where, as we had a soundbite from the head of Marathon Asset Management saying that, you typically don't see the unemployment rate go up until after we are in a recession. So I'm just curious, are they talking about recession? Are they concerned about it? Just curious.
So the level of concern, always concerned about a downturn that turns into an absolute recession, but the level of confidence in the state of the economy has gone up, I think, exponentially, Carol, over the last 18 months. People have been talking about that recession. It's going to happen 6 months from now, 6 months from now. So between labor markets and consumers spending, stubbornly, pieces of the economy just aren't cooperating with some of the forecasts. Back to labor force participation rate, I think what's most encouraging is that in the 25 to 54-year-old segment, considered to be prime workers, that labor force participation rate has actually gone up. But around the people that are on the sidelines, younger workers and older workers, way too many of them on the sidelines, and I think it should be a priority for both the public sector and the private sector to find ways to bring these folks back in. Regarding the
we had a great piece on the Bloomberg yesterday, the Bloomberg Big Take, I believe it was, and it was just talking about all the factories that are being built in the United States, but that the technical skills, that there are workers that need, that they're going to be needed in those factories, the technical skills to take on those jobs. And is that part of what you guys are working on, or?
Absolutely, in a very big way. So the upskilling, the reskilling, the retraining of America has become a priority in most sectors, and our industry is working both with clients and with government to find ways to make it really a reality. We've given lip service to lifelong learning for as long as we've been part of the labor force, but we have never seen so many changes within occupations. And the big change is now that employers are really focusing on skills, not so much job descriptions, not so much degrees that have often associated with kind of entry-level requirements to get a foot in the door. Really focusing on skills, and within the skill sets, and going in and saying, look, we're going to have to do some upskilling here in terms of the impact that technology is having on now, we believe some 35% of jobs. It's going to impact some 65% of jobs over the next few years. And it's got to be an absolute priority.
All right, can we leave it on that note? Richard, have a good weekend. Richard Walquist, he is President and Chief Executive Officer of American Staffing Association on Zoom in Virginia. Matt, we'll see what happens. I feel like, companies have been afraid to let go of workers, right? We talked about worker hoarding and so on and so forth because they're worried about being able to replace those workers. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Well, the interesting thing, I think, is hours worked. As Yelena Fillieva pointed out, when she did, I started digging a little bit deeper into it. It just hasn't expanded in the second quarter. And I made a little bit of a joke about AI kind of taking some of the productivity away. But that's what you're going to start seeing in that's probably the not-too-distant future.
And, I'm also thinking about, I was at a store yesterday here in New York City, and I checked myself out, and it was a clothing retailer that I've never done that before. But it's just, I think you have more and more places that just can't find workers, and so they're automating stuff, right?
Or they want to do it that way, right?
Yeah, or they want to do it that way, exactly. And I thought that was pretty wild.
That is, what was the clothing store? Oh, come on!
I'm not going to tell you.
All right, well, maybe you'll tell me.
But I actually had to take off the security fence. Like, it was crazy.
That's nuts.
Isn't that nuts?
That's nuts.
Yeah, anyway, we'll talk more about it later, maybe. All right, let's get a check on what's national news. Over to Nancy Lyons in our Bloomberg 99.1 News in Washington. Take it away, Nancy.
Thanks, Carol. The U.S. is confirming it will provide thousands of cluster munitions to Ukraine to help it bolster its offensive capabilities and to help it push through Russia's front line. The munitions release spores of small bomblets that may not explode and could pose a risk to civilians. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says that risk is warranted.
We recognize that cluster munitions create a risk of civilian harm from unexploded ordnance. This is why we deferred the decision for as long as we could. But there is also a massive risk of civilian harm if Russian troops and tanks roll over Ukrainian positions and take more Ukrainian territory and subjugate more Ukrainian civilians because Ukraine does not have enough artillery.
Sullivan says Ukraine has promised to use the controversial munitions carefully. Well, President Biden will be heading overseas next week for a NATO meeting, but his first stop will be in London. Bloomberg's Leslie Vincent says he'll be building support for Ukraine in his meeting with the UK leaders.
This is a very important trip symbolically for the United States and the United Kingdom as they approach that very important NATO summit to have what in effect is a pre-meeting at the highest levels with the president meeting the king, obviously meeting the prime minister and demonstrating the solidity of this relationship.
Bloomberg's Leslie Vincent in London. Ahead of next week's NATO meeting, the Allies have agreed to a new pledge to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. 11 of the 31 allies are expected to meet that goal this year. The Justice Department has spent over $9 million investigating former President Trump. That's since the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith in November. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Nancy Ryan.
This is Caroline Hyde.
And I'm Ed Ludlow. Join us for Bloomberg Technology, a daily podcast focusing exclusively on technology, innovation, and the future of business.
We bring you the latest headlines from tech top companies and conversations with the industry's biggest decision makers.
We will have to show our own productivity gains. Privacy is a huge important issue. It's extraordinary what chip technology can achieve.
The Bloomberg Technology Podcast, every weekday.
Subscribe today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at Bloomberg.com.
Are you tired of high cable TV rates? Sign up for Dish today and get a $500 bonus offer while supplies last. Plus, lock in your price for 2 years guaranteed. Call All American Dish, your Dish authorized retailer now.
800-296-1251. 800-296-1251. That's 800-296-1251. Offers required credit qualification, 24-month commitment, early termination fee, and the auto pay. Restrictions apply. Call for details. Robert Cohen is president of digital robotics and enabling technologies at Stryker, a $100 billion U.S. medical device company. He's also an engineering graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology and a strong advocate for hands-on training.
Feels what NJIT has done with the opening of the makerspace laboratories where students get more hands-on practical experience. See 3D printing, water jet cutting, machining in action, using high-tech quality coordinate measuring machines to inspect parts, giving that student even more value than ever before. So the NJIT with the disciplines and the way to the disciplines are broken down, access to labs, access to research, and now access to hands-on. I think NJIT in fact is going to be a leader in that area, and I think NJIT students are even more desired by industry than ever before.
NJIT, New Jersey